Hey everyone, I'm thrilled today to bring you a conversation that is not going to talk to you so much about how to clinically improve your systems and your communication and how to build your own rockstar doctor life, but more so how to refine maybe some of the habits that you have so that your personal life, specifically your relationships, stay healthy and stable and fulfilling for you as you build your career. Joining me today for a great conversation is Dr. Lee Baucom. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. And by the way, I've talked to rock stars about their relationships. And let me tell you, if they're not careful, those rock stars, whether they're doctors or actual rock stars, can get themselves into trouble.
Well, there's a lot of parallels to this show and that
For
why it
sure.
was named that. And listeners, hopefully you know that. But the whole mission of the show, if you're just joining me or if you're a seasoned listener, is to just help you refine, your own life and make sure that you are living out the truth potential for you and not comparing yourself to other people. So, let's start with, for those who don't know of your work, and certainly listeners, we're going to have all the links to Dr. Baucom's work in our show notes. But please, just give us a little overview. What are you doing right now? And I'm sure we'll get into how you got here.
Yeah, so right now I continue to do something I've been doing now for, gosh, coming on 3 decades of helping couples who are in trouble in their relationship. That is one big group that I work with. Interestingly, I also work with entrepreneurs who are struggling on figuring out what their business looks like and using books to build their business. And then I also do work training coaches to go out and do their coaching practice. So all of that is around thriving in life, though. And the core of what I've been doing is helping couples now since I went online in '99. So way last century
Yeah, yeah,
with
yeah.
a website. And that continues today. That has been the heart of my work to help people have good, strong, constructive relationships while they do what they're meant to do in their life.
Hmm. And I mean, you're certainly a multi-passionate entrepreneur.
I keep finding places to dig in because it's always about what is the mission? How do you help people fulfill their life? So my background is always about what is meaning and purpose. I grew up, my father was a minister, my mother was a counselor, and so their whole thing was centered around what's meaningful and purposeful. And I
Mm,
took that in, and I keep stumbling on places to ask the question, how do we become more meaningful, have our deeper purpose?
mhm.
And so relationships was one way of doing that. As an author myself, I stumbled into how you build a business from a book. And
Mhm.
so that I watched many authors who were at the book going, what do I do with this thing? I mean, it's
Mhm.
not selling. What do I do? And
Mhm.
so that got into that. And by the way, I also, after doing all of my work to be trained as a therapist, turned around, I mean, literally turned like I was writing my dissertation and turned to my wife with a magazine in my hand and said, this is how I do work. And this was back in the mid 90s. And it was about coaching, this new profession called coaching when there
Mhm.
wasn't a coach on every corner. And I turned around and did 3 years of training as a coach right after
Mhm.
that. So now I also help coaches who are trying to figure out how to be a coach.
Yeah, that's a bit of a sore spot for many people who are actually trained coaches. I mean, I'm sure you see it as a therapist. I see it as a chiropractor too.
Yeah.
Nowadays, people with a lot less qualifications and even life experience, as you said, there's a coach in every corner, like are calling themselves. And I know plenty of therapists that get frustrated because there's someone teaching grief counseling, but they really have no training in it, right? Or
Yeah.
someone that's building, I'm sure you see it in the relationship space too. So I think there's a fine line between using your experience and impacting others, just on your personal life versus actually having some clinical training and expertise and studies in it.
Absolutely. And I mean, this certainly fits for the chiropractor world where there are lots of people, we're competing in a market, right? And it's
Yeah.
the marketplace world of healthcare.
Hmm.
And many people who had their own experience becomes like, now I'm the expert in this. And I've
Yeah.
seen this many times and I've had conversations with people who have started programs. I'm like, okay, because that worked for you, you now have an anecdote. You don't have a
Yeah.
method, you don't have a skill set, and yet here they are.
Yeah. I also see it on the opposite, and you probably see this if you're coaching people as well, where so many docs have such amazing skills and expertise and passion, and yet they struggle with expressing themselves and creating a
Yeah.
message and a brand for themselves because they don't feel they're good enough, right? They've got these imposter syndrome things or their own self-doubt or self-worth, or they're just going through a bad time of something. But,
Yeah.
I think we see both ends of it.
Well, in fact, my experience is the people who with the highest level of imposter syndrome are the ones who are most capable of making changes and helping
Yeah.
people. The people
Yeah.
who don't suffer from that are the ones who worry me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're multifaceted humans, right? And I think that's why this conversation is pertinent is, we are a reflection, I think, in our businesses about how healthy our relationships are in our interpersonal skills in our practice, but also how that, if you're not happy in your personal life, I've seen it, in my own practice and with clients, that translates into your business life.
It
We
does.
can't always compartmentalize them really well. And I know with you working with healthcare professionals, you've seen some fairly consistent patterns or challenges. You want to share a little bit about what you've noticed?
Yeah, so let's start back with how I see it in the relationship space because this will lead into it. This is a common pattern I see with where marriages get into trouble. I call it the pause button. They
Mm,
hit the pause button. So what that looks like is, you spend all this time finding this person, falling in love with this person, deciding that this person is the one for the rest of your life, and you go through this little ceremony, which you walk in single and walk out married for life.
mm,
And then you launch into life. And so this is where it often hits for professionals. And that life includes making money based on the work you do. And
mm,
in healthcare world, the more hours you put in, the more the money flows. But
mm,
that's really it's it can become an addiction almost.
mm, mm,
It pulls you in on that into ways where you're moving your energy around. So
mm,
while it was on the relationship, you kind of go, okay, we've got this nailed. We're done with this, or we're not done with this, but we're done with the building
mm,
of this. We've got this now. So now we need to do these other things, whether it's, the practice or parenting or whatever else is calling your name. And
mm,
so you hit the pause button. That's the pause, right? The hit
mm,
the pause button, believing that your relationship already has it. So just what I watched years ago, I saw premarital couples. They had if
mm.
they were getting married in one of seven big places of faith in my community, they had to come see me 3 times. And
Right.
I was always asking this question, like, why do you guys believe? So my job, as I saw it, was sometimes picking fights between them
Right.
because I needed to demonstrate to them that they didn't have everything nailed down and we needed to talk. And so
Yeah.
I would say, why do you believe you've beat the odds? If I walked down the street and said to almost anyone, what are the odds of a marriage making it? They would be like 50-50. Basically,
Mm,
it's true. It's a little better than that, but let's use that as an estimate. So why do
mm,
you guys think you've already beat the odds? Because you're now committing for life. And
mm,
all of them would say, because we have the real love, like we have what it takes. And the people I saw who were struggling at the end of a relationship thought they
mm,
did too.
mm.
So that raises the question of what happened. It's not the real love that got you down the aisle. It's what do you do from there? And if you hit the pause button, you go from connecting to disconnecting.
Right.
And
So you're saying, sorry,
relationships,
just to backtrack, are you saying that couples will hit the pause button, like while they're trying to build their business, they'll hit a pause button on their relationship?
while they're doing lots in life, they'll hit the pause
Right.
on their
Not
relationship.
just
Yeah. So
their business building. Okay.
and so let's add in multi dimensions, right? Usually it's you're early in your career, you're starting to do the parent thing. You've probably got aging parents, you've got all these hobbies and interests, and you've put all of this energy into the relationship, and it's like reallocating. And the
Mm,
problem is that reallocation takes it to zero for most
right.
people. They're like, we'll come back to us with the best of intentions. And that is the thing that I think a lot of people miss. I'm not saying that people went, up, time to disconnect from my spouse. They're like, we'll get back to us.
Right.
As soon as
It's
we
almost like
get to
they
this.
trust their security of it and they trust they don't need to. I mean, I think that's even the case with friendships, right?
Yeah.
With, family member relationships. If you're not investing in people in time, that connection is going to change.
Well, there are only two ways a relationship goes. It's either growing and expanding or shrinking and dying. I mean, that's
Right.
it, right? There's
Yeah.
no static and there's no suspended animation.
Yeah.
And so they think that they've hit suspended animation, and they'll always say, just ahead of where we are, we'll be back to us when the kids are out of diapers and school, out of school. I mean, all of that. When my
Hmm.
career gets to this point, when I've got my practice to this level, I've got my practice, well, to this level,
Hmm.
and sometimes they're like, there'll be an exit strategy in place, but it's, years down the road, or they think they'll bring on associates and that will slow down the work.
Hmm.
So they have all these
Hmm.
beliefs that just down the road, they'll get back to us. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, the us is always a little bit in the future. So the
Right.
disconnection begins to strain the relationship, since it needs that connection. So
Hmm.
I see it in healthcare, almost any profession where you're basically, what's my hour? How do I get compensated? Hourly, and
Hmm.
or sessionally,
Right. So
and
what do you
that.
think is the connection there? Is it because like there's, docs, some docs are trying to add more hours. So some docs aren't trying to add more hours. They just want to add more people to the hours that they're there. So it's not like they've got more hours away from their family or
mm,
their relationship.
Well, except for that still is a drain, right? We
Okay.
have so much capacity for
Right.
relating.
Okay.
Um, I had a conversation just the other day with a chiropractor, and I'm like, "Do you have any touch left at the end of the day for people in your
Mm,
life?" And he was like, "I am out. I mean, like I am
yeah.
drained. I've been touching all day, and I go home and I've got kids on me and a spouse who wants more attention, and I just don't have any more touch." So
Mm,
that it's not fewer hours, because if you're cramming in more sessions, it's just more touch, it's more drain
yeah.
points, more
Yeah.
relation outlay. And that's true for any healthcare. Part of the roots of any healing is that relationship, so you've
Right.
got to put in that relationship. and
Yeah.
and so if it's at the end of the day you're out, your batteries are empty, that's what you're taking home.
Oh, I can appreciate that. I know there's some days at the end of a long day where there's a mental drain. And depending on how connected you are with your people in your practice, a lot of us are really, you build a relationship. So you may not only be making the mental, decisions around how to care for them, how to adjust them, what their plan of management needs to be, managing your team, all those kind of business, we'll say frontal lobe kind of,
Hmm.
responsibilities. You're also dealing with the emotions of some of the people in our practice, and people
Yeah.
unload all kinds of things with us and things that you may observe with family dynamics. So that combined with us chiropractors, I mean, we're physical, right? Yeah, we are touch, but there is a physical drain on our bodies. So I can certainly relate to that. I know there's times when I've finished at the end of the day, I'm like, I just really need to not talk to anyone tonight, and I just need some quiet because I feel overstimulated and I don't know if over like touched, but just that load of my own personal capacity. So I think you've
Hmm.
really hit on a nerve that a lot of docs can relate to because, and maybe haven't actually acknowledged.
It is hard to see that because people want to think that they can separate their life. There's the professional
Yeah.
life and home life, and there
Yeah.
isn't that.
Yeah.
We are ourselves, who are coming in, and so if we're coming in already tired from, say, stress at home,
Hmm.
we only have that much less to
Hmm.
commit to the relationships at work. And then we commit to those relationships at work and we only have less. And so you get into this pattern.
Hmm.
And because we are often unaware of that drain, we often hit zero before we recognize we've hit zero. And
Hmm.
most people I see in the healthcare field really want to show up. I mean, they're about relationships. You wouldn't be in the field
Yeah.
if you didn't want to be about relationships.
Hmm.
And so, being about relationships makes it hard to admit that you may be at a deficit in relationships,
Yeah.
and that drags it down even further.
Would you say there are some cues that people could watch out for? I mean, we are all about prevention and wellness in our practices, right? But I talk to docs all the time and it's like, okay, how's your health? Are you eating well? Are you sleeping well? How's your level of, emotional resilience? And, we talk about their burnout cues and we talk about things that are obviously showing signs that their body's not mentally and physically thriving. However, you must see another side of things too. Like, are there cues that you see with your clients that are an indicator that if they don't correct cause sooner than later, they're going to have a problem, right? I mean, we don't want them to get to the empty tank, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and so let's look at some cues that are both physical and then the emotional. The physical ones, I mean, I wear a tracking ring and I wear a smartwatch. I
Yeah.
actually look at that data to ask the question, am I doing too much to be in kind of the safe zone? Am
Yeah.
I tapping my body out? That's a realistic read. If people
Hmm.
are constantly at that deficit, so I was talking with somebody that I used the Aura ring and I'd given an old one to somebody, and this person was like, I'm not using it anymore. I said, why are you not using it? And the person said, I didn't like the information I was getting,
Yeah.
which is I don't want to take into account what my body is actually telling me as if it's not still there, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's like somebody who has some problem in their body. You're like, I don't want to talk to the doctor because I don't want to know. I'm
Oh
like,
yeah. Find me a chiropractor who
still
hasn't had
there.
someone say that to them. Like,
Yeah,
oh, you
yeah.
to look at my spine because I'm afraid of what you're gonna find.
Yeah, right. And yet that spine is going with them throughout the day, right? So
Exactly.
same kind of thing. We're carrying that through. So
So
that
using
is
data, using things, using some kind of metrics if you have them.
using actual metrics.
Yeah.
How's your sleep? How's your HRV, heart rate,
Mhm.
all of those things that it can very accurately measure. So that is a
Mhm.
piece of the puzzle and
Yeah.
actually attending to that. So that's the first one. The second, emotionally though, irritability is a really good indicator of where
Mm,
we are in relationships and in our energy level.
mm,
Irritability, going home and reacting irritably to somebody
mhm,
is not it's not necessarily telling us what the problem is as much as that there is a problem. That's
mhm.
not a normal state for a connected relationship. We're
Right.
irritable and frustrated, right? So that's a point.
I
Another
don't think
one,
it's, sorry, I don't think it's a normal state for a healthy human in a relationship or not. If you are constantly irritated, cranky, I think it's worth taking a step back, maybe finding some support or professional help to think
yes,
like you should be happy and thriving, right? And so if
what's
you're
going on?
not, if your mental health is suffering, if you're cranky, if you're sad, and it's not just a situational, thing, it's worth looking into for your own health and vitality.
For sure. And because
Yeah.
irritability, as much as we kind of downplay that, irritability is a sign that our body is in fight or flight mode, well, actually
Mm.
in fight mode.
Yeah.
It's you're revved up for something. And so that is a good diagnostic. If you're feeling empty, it's the
Mhm.
same, it's kind of the opposite. That's the often the flight mode. And
Right.
so attending to what is that emotional state is important. And then if you find yourself going, I would rather not go home or
Mm.
I'd rather not go to the office. Those are important signs that something's going on
Yeah.
somewhere in there. I'd rather not go home is telling you something about where the energy is not.
Yeah.
So one of the things, let's go back to that pause button. If we're not getting the connection in our relationship, we will look for it somewhere.
Mm.
And for people in the healthcare world, when you're the kind of the star of the show for all of the people coming in, the patients coming in, the clients coming in to see you, you're the hero.
Mhm.
That is a place where you can be drawing from that
Mhm.
as a stand-in for what's missing in other relationships and family relationships.
Like
And
people can almost get addicted or have an affair, as you said earlier, to their work.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
if you want to get all the love in the world, and it's not, it's like having a dog, right? I mean, my dog is always loving on me, and it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what I've done today and
Yeah.
who I've spoken crossly to. My dog's like, let's love on each other. And it's the
Yeah.
same. And in the office, I'm getting the attention, and that can be very deceptive to people that they think
Hmm.
that, oh, what a great job I'm doing, but it's also sucking them in. Right,
Right.
that is it's a temptation to go after that. So that in itself can be a good sign. If you're too tied into work, I'm
Hmm.
not saying you shouldn't love your work. It's just that when you're using the work to get those needs met,
Mm.
you're pointing to a problem.
Do you think it's more so? I mean, I would say that there's some people that would use it as coping, right? The same way that people will use, substances, maybe shopping, gambling. Like people have addictions or ways that they will cope with the voids that they have for themselves, right?
Yeah.
Would you say that? And I think working is like that, but in for those of us in healthcare, are you also suggesting that we get the emotional connection and physical touch needs met? So that's why docs will, if they're not getting connection in their relationships, they will turn to work more because we actually get the touch and the intimacy.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
It
that makes
can.
sense.
And you watch it and it kind of as a cascade. So the more I'm at the
Right.
office and seeing people, the more money is coming in. That feels good.
Yeah.
The more people are coming in, the more praise you're getting for the work you're doing. That feels good.
Yeah.
Hands-on, that gives you a certain connection. That
Hmm.
feels good. So there are a lot of that feels goods all in one piece when maybe at
Hmm.
home it doesn't feel so good because of the disconnection that's there.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've talked about a couple of different, we'll say, relationship risks for chiropractors and healthcare professionals. The capacity being touched out by the end of the day, not feeling connected in our relationships, how that spirals into, other patterns. What are some solutions? Like, do you have any things that you would offer listeners? Aside from obviously you've got a great podcast and you've got some other books and resources, but are there a couple of things we could address right now?
Yeah, for sure. One is so if that pause button is about disconnecting,
Hmm.
it is making sure that you unpause, that you actually spend some time on the relationship. One of the things that whenever I say that, people are like, I don't have time for that. All the
Mm,
time that I put into the relationship, on the front side, I don't have time for that anymore. And
right.
it's this all or nothing kind of thought process instead of going, what does it take to actually maintain a relationship? And you've already built the momentum. And the
Right.
momentum is part of the reason that people don't realize they've hit the pause button because they have some momentum going in. And as it falls away, then it begins to be more difficult. So the momentum is what can help people realize it doesn't take that much energy to keep it going, but you got to keep it going. Let's create some targets for people. I think there are three levels or three dimensions of connection. The first one, physical.
Mhm.
And so, talked about my dog. How does my dog express that my dog likes me? Right up against me. That's physical connection, loving touch.
Right.
And that this is where the touch out can happen for chiropractors,
Mhm.
particularly that they're having to be loving in their touch, even if it's
Right.
firm or whatever else. You're not beating on somebody, you're adjusting, and you
Yeah.
come at it from that way. So loving touch at home is, when I bring that up, people are like, oh, you mean sex? And my response is no, but yes, that is a version of that. But there are
Yeah.
lots of others, holding hands, hugging, kissing, patting each other on the back. I mean, any loving touch does that. The longer you touch, the more you get a cascade of hormones, but you still have it.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget there is something in it for you. Like if you hug someone, it's one thing that you feel like we're giving out the hug, but we're receiving the feelings that go along with it, right?
Yes.
So let's always reframe ourselves like, okay, what can you gain also with
Right.
when you're physically affectionate or have physical intimacy with someone, there's a reward for you as well.
That is a great point. So whenever I say that, some people are thinking like they have to give all of what I'm about to
Yeah.
say, and
Yeah.
it is a mutual we give
Yeah.
and get, right? So there's
Yeah.
a place where it gets together. So that is physical. Emotional connection is so physical is entirely nonverbal. I
Mm,
don't have to. If I say I'm going to hug you, that doesn't help at all. Hugging is what does it, right? So
right.
emotional connection is both physical or nonverbal and verbal. So the nonverbal, as we've been talking, you've nodded along with things I've said. I've nodded along with things you've said.
Mm,
That is a way of nonverbally saying, yeah, we get this, right? We're on the same
mm,
page on this. So there are two big pieces. Oh, so let me just put a footnote because I just mentioned that. These three ways of connecting, this is how we connect, period. It's just the
right.
intensity of that in a marriage has another layer to it. And
Right.
specifically when we get to that third dimension. So in this, we have the nonverbal and verbal of we get each other and we support each other.
Hmm.
So the verbs or the verbiage we use is about those things, but also, I've had the experience many times with my wife of looking over at something and we give each other a look like, what is that about? And we know we get each other, or when the kids are doing something, we're like, yeah, what's that? They're adults now, so we
Yeah.
don't have to do it as much, but when
Sometimes you
they
do
were
that
kids,
more.
yeah, well, but they catch on now, right? When they were
Yeah, I
kids, you could do it and they're like, oh,
know.
whatever. So that way of connecting with each other, we get each other and we support each other. Um,
Hmm.
that's that emotional connection. And then there's spiritual connection. And when I say this, people are like, oh, you mean religion? And my response is no, but yes, that is one way because if I tell someone about what I believe, something that I believe deeply, that is revealing something that I don't reveal to many people.
Mm,
So our spiritual connection is what do we believe? What are our values? What do we dream about? What do we fear? What do we hope
mm,
for? That level of connection. And that's the one that often isn't particularly shared with too many others.
mm.
We don't share that level, and that's while you may have physical connection and even emotional connection with a client or a patient, you don't share about your core values very often. That's another
Right.
layer that you don't do. And that's often the layer where people fall in love. They
Mm,
just didn't realize that. It's that
right.
talk that you have where you talk about the family you grew up in and the values you have and what you're hoping for, all of those pieces. So now we've created the three layers, the
Right.
three dimensions of connection. That creates targets too. If you're going, wow, we did hit the pause button. Now we have three areas to begin to work back towards.
Mm. So, it comes back down to making time, right?
Mm.
And is this where you know, docs making date nights or creating time? I mean, I know that the hesitation that some people listening to this are going to have is what you said earlier is the time. Here I am trying to, and on all different stages of and seasons of a practice. If you're in the growth phase in the early days, you really, and you're trying to build a practice. And so your mind is distracted sometimes. And money is maybe tight, and creating those moments and making those extra times for dates sometimes can seem like it seems elusive, right?
Yeah.
So I tell people, like, find the moments where you can, right? If it's a simple cup of coffee in the morning before work, or it's a simple something evening, like it's small little moments and small rituals can matter. It doesn't have to be a weekly, expensive night out or anything like that. Do you find that some of your clients struggle with the implementation for those same reasons?
So one of the things you put up as a barrier is we make it a bigger deal than it actually
Yeah.
is. You know,
Yeah.
and so we'll lay it out in several different ways. One is if couples are disconnected, date night is not a good idea. It's
Mm,
too much pressure.
right.
If they are connected, it happens to take care of itself anyway. You know, you're like, oh, let's go to the movie and we can grab some dinner on the way because you're connected. That's just part of your routine. But if you're
Yeah.
going, we are going to do date night, if it's in a disconnected relationship, that can be overwhelming to what is already there.
Hmm.
Then we're going to spend some time in this deep conversation is a load of connection. But if the ways around it are to maybe sit down and decompress your day, that doesn't take a lot of time nor a
Yeah.
lot of emphasis. But so one of the things I notice is that when people are disconnected, they start doing reporting versus rapporting.
Mm.
So building rapport is how we connect with someone. And
Yeah.
then we switch over to reporting. You say, how was your day? Oh, I had 15 patients and I had to get some reports out for insurance. That's
Right.
not how was your day. That's a report of your day.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So recognizing that sometimes it's people finding a way of just going, for I get home, I do some process of switching hats to home life, maybe changing
Hmm.
clothes or whatever it takes,
Hmm.
and then to just touch base. How
Right.
was your day actually? Like really? And so a 10-15 minute conversation is what we're talking about. Touch. I mean, a lot of people in the evening are just settling in for maybe TV or they're gonna, look at something on their iPad or whatever. Can you sit close to each other? Just
Mm.
close enough to maybe put your legs on the other person's laps or sit beside each other and hold hands or something that is that's it's not that you're adding time in, you're adding proximity in and
Right.
making sure that you're at the same place, the same time, close enough to touch. And
Hmm.
most people, if they're in a connected relationship, are doing that automatically. So this is where you're
Hmm.
trying to regain the habits of connection. Spiritual connection is the one that I often get people like, how do I get into that conversation? We haven't had that
Hmm.
conversation in a long time.
Hmm.
And my thing is, given all that we have in media in front of us, the books, the series, the movies, the whatever, it's easy to say, I was reading this book and it had this interesting thing. It talked about this, and I was thinking
Hmm.
about how that fit into my life. You've
Right.
just now launched into a spiritual connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've done it the back door, like
Hmm.
that book, that movie. We went to see Project Hail Mary the other day,
Yeah.
and my wife and I were driving home talking about some of the pieces of that and how it fits in for, how the continuing in difficult situations, finding your way through, having a growth mindset. I mean, there are pieces of that. We were
Yeah.
talking at a level that you step back and go, oh, that's spiritual connection. But all we were doing was talking about the movie.
Yeah. Well, I like what you said there about, finding, switching gears, obviously, and finding a rhythm or some kind of ritual that practitioners can do, whether it's when you leave the office. I know some docs do it on there if they have a commute or a drive home, or they actually will physically switch gears or to have something that helps them remind themselves, I'm going into another part of my life right now.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
love what you said too about, it doesn't have to be a long time. You can have a quick 15-minute, real, like, chatty, good conversation that connects you more than an hour with someone sometimes, right? I know a friend of mine used to say that his grandparents used to always have happy hour, and
Mhm.
this is back in the days where his grandfather would be out, working all day in the fields, farming, and the grandmother was in the home. And every night, between 4 and 6, literally, grandfather always had a beer and the mother always had a gin. And whoever was around, was allowed to pause because they made that time just to say, hey, how are you? Before I go and cook supper, before we get off and do the evening chores, let's just take a little bit of a pause. And I think, I mean, whether it's happy hour with a cocktail or a 15-minute chat, at the end of the day at some point, being intentional about let's take a moment to just actually reconnect. If you have children, they can wait 15 minutes. And also, what are they observing? They're seeing that you two are making time for each other and a
Yeah.
loving relationship. So I think that's a smart solution for people too that are feeling like I gotta fit more time in. It's like, no, no, no. How can you just fit this into your day already rather than thinking you have to add one more thing on your schedule?
So the interesting thing is when I watch people who are trying to kind of jump back into this, and they suddenly start having feeling like they have to have these hour-long conversations.
Right.
And those hour-long conversations turn upside down pretty quick if you're
Mm,
disconnected, right? And
right.
so you're correct. These 15-minute segments are a lot more important than having an hour or
Mm,
2 hour or 3 hour. Part of the date night problem is, what do you resort to after those few minutes? Unless you've built the connection, you're going to go with calendar and kids
yeah.
basically in the conversation, or you're going to get into conflict areas.
Right.
So now we're undoing any connection that we would have gotten out of that. The
Yeah.
short little segments where you have transitioned and you're transitioning now into family life don't have to be long. 15 minutes, half an hour. I mean, they had that 2 hour block, but 15 minutes for a lot of couples is a good starting point. Let's take a walk
Hmm.
together. Let's have a glass of wine on the back porch or a glass of tea on the back porch.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it's just a let's get back to us. And
Yeah.
you're correct. What a great model for kids.
Hmm.
When kids don't know, people don't know how to build a great marriage. But
Hmm.
if kids are seeing that kind of relating, they step into that and expect that when they step into their own marriage.
Well, and even I think with my own sons, sometimes I'm cooking dinner and I'm busy and they're downloading all kinds of things. And I will literally stop, and I've done this forever. I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's wait until dinner when I can give you my full attention.
Yeah.
Because right now you're spitting some things at me and I'm distracted because I'm trying to prepare our meal. And so we've already kind of trained ourselves in my family to be like, okay, let's wait till we can actually be present with each
Yeah.
other. And, if you have young children or older children, I mean, even as adults, like a face-to-face 15 minutes of undivided attention does more than half an hour of, snippets of conversation where you're distracted because someone's on their phone or the phone, someone else comes in and interrupts the conversation or you're trying to get work done. Like, I think if we can really just try to be more present with all the people in our life, that's always going to be a win.
So if we do research, just research driven,
Mhm.
typically we can only take about 20 minutes of focus on something anyway.
Good to know.
And so if people are like, oh, I'm going to talk with my spouse for an hour, you're not going to have the focus of that.
No.
20 minutes and there's a switch there. So um,
Mhm.
that that research lets us know that those brief conversations can be way more important than the deep conversations. Now, is there a place for a deep conversation?
Yeah.
Sure. But you're not going to have that unless you have a connection already. It can't
Hmm.
sustain that.
Right.
So we work with what works. And, I think a 15, 20-minute conversation is a great goal to start with.
Just find some kind of rhythms in your day. I it's you were said something earlier and it reminded me of, when I give people advice about stretching. Everyone doesn't want to make more time to stretch. So I am always reminding them, okay, well, where are you already doing this? Like if you're watching a movie at night, and just
Hmm.
like you alluded to, if you're sitting with your partner and you're already both going to be sitting there relaxing, maybe watching a movie or television or being with your kids, maybe you can sit a little closer, right? And that's going to feel that nonverbal cue. That's going to feel that physical touch. Where can you fit it into your day without trying to add more time to it? Kind of like stretching. You could both people could stretch while we're at it here if you want to actually add your health even more. But it's not about making more time for these things. It's about finding the times in your day where you can already add these things into it.
And let's just use that stretching thing because I think that's going to fit for a lot of people.
Yeah.
When people say, I don't have time to stretch, the kind of the counterbalance is, do you have time not to? I mean,
Right.
you're here because of this problem, and it's the same in a relationship. When people say, I don't have time
Mm.
for that, you don't have time for the consequences of not doing that. I mean, that
Yeah.
ends up so when people are suddenly in desperate situations and they will throw any amount of time to try to save a relationship, it would have been well served to have been putting in little 15 minutes along the way to get the momentum going and keep it going.
Yeah. Much easier. How do you define success? I mean, I think the core of all we're talking about here is that docs have to remember that a successful, happy, thriving life is not just building a profitable business, right? That just defines who we are and uses our skills and certainly creates a lifestyle that we all want. But a successful life also includes successful relationships, right?
Yeah.
And so we're putting time into those relationships is just as important as putting time into your business. How would you define it for yourself?
So I had an experience early in my career. I was a chaplain, and that meant I was also the evening chaplain, which meant I
Yeah.
was there when the doctors went home and the nurses were lower staff and family was home. I had a lot of conversations, and not one conversation did anybody say, I wish I'd worked harder at the job. I wish I'd
Mm,
gained more money. I wish I had more stuff at home. Everyone was about what are the relationships I didn't attend to. I wish I had attended to.
mm.
And that set me to understand that there are two things that we have to balance. Yes, we have to have enough to live whatever lifestyle,
Mhm.
we want, but we need to be clear about what's driving the wants, because a lot of times that's a comparison piece that we always lose. There's always somebody
Yeah.
who's got more toys and more whatever. So be careful of the comparison. And we balance that with, am I doing things in the relationships? And there's a third
Hmm.
piece, and that is, am I leaving the world better? When
Mm,
people focus on what does my lifestyle need to look like for me to be satisfied? What are the
hmm.
relationships that I want in my life? And how does that come together to create my meaning and purpose? That's success.
That's it. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground here today. Listeners, I hope you have enjoyed this conversation and learned a few things to support, I think, all of your relationships. I mean, I know that your work, Lee, focuses on marriages, but some people are choosing not to get married. They're choosing to stay, common law or have other committed relationships. I think this conversation also applies to our deep friendships, our family relationships, our kids. So I think some of the things you've touched on certainly can help us enhance our own communications and our own sense of relationship fulfillment. Um, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up today? Anything that you would love listeners to really take to heart?
If I boil a lot down, one of the things that I see in successful marriages is I call it being a we.
Mm-hmm.
We are in this together. We're a team. And
Mm-hmm.
that idea of we're a team fits in so many places. So I think it is especially true in a marriage. Do you feel like you're on the team together? And that means you're
Mm-hmm.
showing up to your best self. So that's the
Yeah.
team. I see it a bigger team when we talk about a family. Or do we bring the kids in as part of the team also? Not they're the
Mm-hmm.
stars, but they are part of the team. When you're working with a client or a patient, we're a team on this. How can we, band together to make this successful for you? If it's a practice, we're a team.
Mm-hmm.
How do we work together instead of competing with each other? So that team mindset
Mm-hmm.
can do a lot in life, but absolutely transform a marriage when we see it as different than you versus me, but we're a team in this. That gets
Mm.
you way down the road.
What's better for us? Yeah, for sure.
So great decision point, right? What's better
Yeah,
for you
yeah,
versus what's better for me, and the better is what's better for us.
yeah. Okay, well, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Listeners, I hope you have as well. Be sure to check out the show notes for links on how to connect with Lee further, whether you want to listen to his podcast or read his blog or talk to him personally or grab one of his books. And until our paths cross again, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.